Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias the Guy. If you really want to understand how legacy media is lying to you, a few days ago was just another absolutely perfect example. There was a think tank, an American think tank, who has uncovered the United Front activities around the world, specifically within 4 to 8 nations. Canada, the United States, Germany. They had a presser. We're going to watch this presser. It's not very long. But pay attention to the inquisitive minds and deep journalists that were so curious about this bombshell report and how far they went to ask questions about it. Let's take a listen.
Press conference between the Macdonald-Laurier Institute and the Jamestown Foundation, who have joined us from Washington, D.C. Now, before I begin, I want to extend our sincere condolences to the community of Tumbler Ridge. As a parent, I can't begin to imagine how some of these families are feeling right now, and our thoughts and prayers with them, and especially Maya Ladder, who I know is fighting for her life right now. My name is Kevin Vong, and I'm a senior fellow at MLI and a former member of parliament from Toronto. Let me begin by saying that today's joint endeavor is a good reminder of the long-standing relationship and partnership between our two democracies, who, whatever our differences, have a lot more in common than that which divides us. And one of the things that we have in common is a shared adversary in Communist China, who may present as a benevolent and smile to our face, while simultaneously have their hand in our back pocket. An authoritarian state who will extend a hand claiming to be in the spirit of friendship, but do friends take the other's people hostage? Would a friend steal your technology and then undercut your industries and companies and steal your jobs? Do they buy up your medical PPE before a deadly global pandemic? Or do they set up illegal police stations in your country? Do they put bounties on your people or interfere in your democratic elections? These aren't hypothetical questions. They're real examples of what has happened or is happening today in Canada. And you'll be hearing today from our speakers about the Chinese Communist Party's primary tool of interference, the United Front Work Department. First, you will hear from Cheryl Yu. Cheryl is fellow in China Studies at the Jamestown Foundation. She's the author of the report that they're releasing today, Harnessing the People, Mapping Overseas United Front Work in Democratic States. And she's also the co-author of Chinese Communist Party Covert Operations Against Taiwan. Following Cheryl will be Peter Mattis, president of the Jamestown Foundation and an advisor to the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, where I'm also proud to serve on the Alumni Council. Peter is a former CIA counterintelligence analyst and was previously then Senator Marco Rubio, today Secretary of State. He was his staff director for the Congressional Executive Commission on China. Finally, you'll hear from retired Lieutenant General, or for our friends joining us from DC, Lieutenant General Christopher Coates, who was previously Commander of Canadian Joint Operations Command, CJOC, and Deputy Commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, also known as NORAD. Today, he's a colleague and Director of Foreign Policy, National Defense, and National Security at MLI. Now, before I pass the floor to Cheryl, I just want to situate everyone with some key considerations, starting with diplomatic representation. China's diplomatic footprint in Canada, as was released by the Haute Commission, is 176 Chinese diplomats. Now compare that to the US footprint, which consists of a little over, coincidentally, 176 American diplomats. But what's curious is, if you put it in perspective of total trade, which I know is at the forefront of many Canadians' minds today, is that trade with the United States represents over $1 trillion, or about 70% of our total trade, whereas trade with China is around 120 billion, or 8%, which is about a ninth of how much we trade with the US. So that begs the question, are the Chinese Communist Party's diplomats just really inefficient? And not just a small amount of inefficiency, are they 9 times less efficient at their jobs? Or are they doing something else? And if it's not trade, what else are they doing here in Canada? I think it bears reminding folks that there was at least one diplomat who was from the Toronto Chinese Consulate, Zhao Wei, who was declared persona non grata in 2023 and expelled from Canada because he wasn't conducting trade. He was coordinating efforts to target one of my former parliamentary colleagues, Conservative MP Michael Chong, and his family. What are the activities of the 8 out of 9? So are they really inefficient, or are they doing something else? Those are some of the questions that I'm asking. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Cheryl.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to speak about this report and its implications for Canada. My research looks at how the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP, built influence in democratic societies through what it calls overseas United Front work. United Front is the party's weapon that it uses to expand control and influence without using force. The party uses this system to shape political, social, and economic environments in ways that serve the party's goal, which is becoming the dominant global power and advancing claims such as the annexation of Taiwan. And through ongoing and long-term relationship building, the party has created a global network of individuals and organizations inside open societies. This report maps that system across the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Germany, identifying more than 2,000 United Front-linked organizations. These organizations are identified through leadership links to the United Front system, including connections through meetings, delegates, and advisors to agencies such as the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference and the All China Federation of Returned Overseas Chinese. And organizations in Canada are very much part of this. Canada alone has at least 575 United Front-linked organizations, making it the second largest network in the research, and has the highest per capita among the 4 countries. This number gives a sense of how broad and deeply rooted the network already is, but at the same time, it is likely just the surface. Much of the United Front work happens through informal ties, such as personal relationships, invitation to China, honorary titles, and privileged access. So the nearly 600 United Front-linked organizations identified in Canada within a limited amount of time and resources are really just a visible layer of a much larger system operating quietly underneath. And it continues to grow as we speak. Canada is important to the Chinese Communist Party because it has strong institutions, vibrant civil society, and a large diaspora communities. Those are strengths, but at the same time, they are also exactly what the United Front work seeks to leverage. To the party, if it can shape thinking, networks, and decisions in countries like Canada, it doesn't need confrontation. It gets accommodation instead. So Canada, alongside the United States, has become one of the key environments where overseas United Front work is actively developed. And from the research, 3 things stand out. First, the Chinese Communist Party politicizes everything. The network in Canada spans almost every sector of society, including hometown associations, cultural organizations, business and trade groups, schools, professional societies, and Chinese language media outlets. Activities that look social, cultural, and economic are treated by the CCP as political resources. And party-linked organizations often carry out those activities that appear benign, such as local-level exchange, people-to-people exchange, youth conversations, and economic activities. They look like normal activities that other countries also do, but the party's intentions matter. The goal is to build up a network of its friends that can be activated when needed. Second, most of the United Front activities are not illegal. It works through relationships. Influence is built through access, invitations, titles, and personal ties, not necessarily through breaking rules. So, for example, individuals with strong United Front ties have accompanied multiple Canadian prime ministers from both political parties to visit the PRC and also participated in policy consultations ahead of those trips. And that is technically legal. They look like normal engagement, and that is precisely why it is so effective. Third, once this network is embedded, it can be mobilized. With this network in place, the party gains the ability to make requests for political influence, narrative shaping, talent recruitment, and even voter mobilization on Beijing's behalf. We see it in academia, where a community-based friendship organization in Edmonton that begins with cultural programming later enter university spaces to promote the so-called Real China narrative and linking these activities to PRC political milestones. We also see United Front-linked organizations protesting transparency measures, such as foreign agent registries, by reframing governance tools as racial discrimination. And we see activation during crises. So during COVID, for example, a hometown association based in Quebec fundraised to purchase medical supplies in response to the United Front System's Fuzhou Overseas Chinese Community Pandemic Prevention Initiative. And what this shows is that United Front networks are not passive. They are built in advance so they can be activated when the party needs leverage. And because the infrastructure already exists inside Canadian society, mobilization can happen quickly and at scale without appearing centrally directed. One other thing I want to mention is that many Chinese Canadians are victims of the CCP's United Front work. The party intentionally targets people of Chinese descent with propaganda, emotional appeals, identity-based messaging, and sometimes coercion. Many people involved in these organizations are unaware of how the system works. So this is not a question of ethnicity, it is a question of state-directed political influence inside a democracy. And protecting targeted communities is part of protecting our democratic institutions. And so to conclude, what the report shows is that foreign influence doesn't usually arrive as a scandal, it arrives as normal engagement until the environment has already been shaped. United Front work uses democracy's openness as its operating environment, and that is why it is difficult to detect and easy to normalize. In my research, the most effective foreign influence operations are invisible or unseen. They succeed by shaping environments and expectations before anyone realizes political influence is taking place. So understanding how influence actually operates is essential if a democratic society wants to remain open without being quietly shaped from within. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
So, first, I just want to express my condolences on behalf of the Jamestown Foundation, myself, for the victims of the school shooting. As a parent, with a child who goes to school, I can't imagine receiving that phone call or seeing that news line. There's a lot of families that are going through a lot, and my heart goes out to them. And I think on behalf of all of us, we would hope that they are able to find solace and a peace that comes through one of these tragedies. I'm incredibly proud to say that Harnessing the People is now available online to download for free. And I also am proud as a sort of a mentor and as a leader of an organization that one of my fellows has her first real solo effort to explain a difficult and complex subject and to highlight the fact that she has done more work than I think just about anyone else on the planet to uncover these networks, to track them not just in Canada, the United States, Germany, and the United Kingdom, but also in other parts of the world. And we're steadily building up our understanding of what they are. And this report is significant because it's not just telling a story based on party documents and what is the purpose of the party's ambitions and what is the purpose of United Front work. What is the purpose of this United Front policy system that starts at the center and goes to the provinces and affects literally every part of the party, right? So you can find United Front work departments in Western corporations that are in China with a party committee inside them, right? You can find them in joint ventures. You can find them in the China Academy of Sciences. It's a pervasive sort of network, and it's really about understanding that the party is at the center. And as Kevin pointed out, is this what friends do? Mao Zedong described United Front work as one of the three sort of tools or weapons, including sort of party management, construction, and discipline, the military force or armed struggle, and United Front work. He described the party as the warrior that wields the twin weapons of armed struggle and United Front to break and shatter the enemy. That means that when we see these organizations, however nice the smile, however nice the gift, the purpose here is about breaking and shattering the enemy. And they're not sitting here looking at us saying that we are friends, right? And if we're engaging through these organizations, then we're allowing the party to control what is China, what it means to be Chinese, and we're accepting the party's terms of engagement. And when we do this unknowingly, when we let some of these leaders represent whole communities of Canadians, of Americans, of English, of many others, Australians, we are letting the party take away the voice of our citizens. And they're using the legitimacy of our citizens to put the party's voice and Beijing's perspective into our politics, into our decision making. The other thing that's really important to know about this is that this is one approach to studying this pervasive system and the method that the party uses to build influence and to deal with its adversaries. But it's not the whole story, not by any stretch. It's a way of thinking, it's a way of understanding politics, and when you look at the way that the party talks, when you look at a speech by Wang Huning, like he gave a couple of days ago at a Taiwan Work Conference, or when you look at the speeches about global order that the Foreign Minister Wang Yi has given, and over the years, you see that this kind of thinking is pervasive in the way in which the party conducts any sort of engagement with us, whether it's business, whether it's diplomatic, in some cases whether it's military, intelligence ties, or an effort to deal with law enforcement cooperation. And we actually have to know this and we have to deal with it. And it means that if we engage normally with the PRC, if we engage normally where the party is present, even inside our own countries, we have to put enormous effort to actually reach Chinese people, right? And that is on all of us as citizens in a democracy to make sure that everyone's voices are heard, right? Both of our countries have had long histories of civil rights and a need to ensure that those voices are heard. You know, we share this heritage of dealing with large multi-ethnic societies, of immigrants at different waves and different times, and it does require effort. And we can't simply let the party make it easy for us, because what the party is so good at doing is bringing control alongside convenience. So I hope you'll read Cheryl's report. It's kind of a 201 study, if you will, that brings you past the introduction, past the purpose, to look at what takes place with all of these different organizations, what it takes place with this large network. But let's remember, this isn't the whole story, because they target a lot of different people at a lot of different levels when you think about the decisions that make democracy work, right? Just yesterday, a political campaign advisor in a small town in the United States was sentenced to 4 years. He was a political advisor on a mayoral campaign in a small town, but he was working for the Ministry of State Security, right? So it may sound conspiratorial, it may sound a little hard to believe, but it's not just at the Prime Minister, but it goes all the way down to local levels. And that means that everyone has a responsibility to be able to talk about the challenge in a reasonable, informed, and thoughtful way. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. You've just, you've just heard a detailed account of how the United Front Work Department operates in Canada and the breadth of its organizational footprint. I want to spend a few minutes on why this matters and why the United Front is not a side issue, but a foundational pillar of Chinese foreign interference in this country. The actions of the United Front Work Department are often misunderstood because they do not look like traditional espionage. It's not primarily about stealing secrets. It's about shaping environments, social, political, economic, and cultural, so that resistance to Beijing's interests is neutralized before it even becomes visible. As documented elsewhere, the United Front Work Department functions as the CCP's, the Chinese Communist Party's, primary mechanism for projecting power into open societies, as Peter mentioned, particularly through diaspora communities, civil society organizations, business networks, academia, and local politics. It's not separate from other malign activities, it enables them. This is where the wider picture becomes clear. Foreign interference in elections, which Canadians have heard about through the Hogue Inquiry, does not happen in isolation, nor do incidents of transnational repression, illicit political financing, or disinformation campaigns. These activities are connected by a common infrastructure of influence, one that the United Front helps build and maintain over years, sometimes decades. Cheryl's report identifies more than 2,000 organizations across democratic countries, including Canada, that have demonstrable links to the United Front system. These organizations often appear legitimate, independent, and community-focused. In many cases, their leaders may not even view themselves as acting on behalf of a foreign state, but the effect is the same. Party narratives are normalized, critics are marginalized, and democratic institutions are quietly conditioned to accommodate Beijing's sensitivities. This conditioning has real consequences for Canadians. As reporting from MLI and others has shown, transnational repression is not abstract. It affects people's daily lives. Students afraid to speak freely, activists harassed or surveilled, families threatened through relatives overseas. The United Front Work Department plays a central role in identifying, monitoring, and mobilizing pressure against those deemed politically unacceptable. At the same time, these influence networks intersect with other national security threats. As I noted at a previous press conference, foreign interference now overlaps with money laundering, elite capture, cyber operations, and organized crime, creating a hybrid threat environment that Canada's legal and institutional frameworks were not designed to handle. This is not conjecture. CSIS has publicly warned that threats to Canada's national security have intensified, and that the scale and simultaneity of these threats are unprecedented in our history. Yet our response remains fragmented. Canada still lacks a fully implemented foreign influence transparency regime. Beneficial ownership registries remain incomplete, facilitating tens of billions of dollars in illicit financial flows annually, flows that can intersect with foreign state influence and coercion. Investigations are routinely impeded by legal constraints that were designed for a different era and a different threat model. What the United Front shows us is that this is not about one department, one report, or one scandal. It's about a sustained strategic effort by a foreign authoritarian state to exploit the openness of our society while remaining largely below the threshold of traditional enforcement. None of this is an argument against engagement with Chinese Canadians. In fact, the opposite is true. Failing to distinguish between the CCP and the Chinese diaspora harms the very communities most affected by interference. Transparency, education, and accountability are essential, not only for national security, but Canada's prosperity and Canada's democracy. The activities we are discussing today are not the tip of a hypothetical iceberg. They are part of a documented pattern supported by years of investigative journalism, academic research, and government reporting. The question is no longer whether this is happening. The question is whether Canada is prepared to respond with the seriousness that the evidence demands. Once again, our thoughts are with the victims and those affected by the horrible events at Tumbler Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci, c'est ce qui conclut cette conférence de presse.
Where is the media? This is a bombshell. Real journalists right now are scouring over this paperwork with their jaws dropped in their laps. That should tell Canadians about our legacy media. Who do they work for? Do they really work for what's best in Canada's interests? Or do they work for a party that's in bed with the CCP? Cheryl Wu is waiting for questions. None. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Everything just got exposed right there. This is why I need you to like, share, and subscribe. Get the word out. There are a lot of great journalists that are talking about this. I'm going to link the actual paperwork so that you can, because it's a little bit hard to find on the internet. I wonder why. As always, I post all the links down below. Now, there's a couple things that should really make Canadians' heads turn. If a person looks at this chart very carefully and looks at GDP, wealth, and population, look where Canada sits compared to 3 other nations. 967 proven organizations in the United States. 575 in Canada. 405 in the United Kingdom and 347 in Germany. Canada outpaces every other country on how overwhelmed we are, how intercepted Canada has, and how influential the CCP is within our country. This is scary stuff. And going through this, it's the little things that stand out on how there seemed to have been a burst during a certain time period. What happened in 2015? Liberal power. The Canada Shandong Chinese Business Association, established in 2015, is a representative example. It has contributed to local development in the PRC and facilitated economic and trade exchanges between the two countries. For instance, in 2016, it organized the Vancouver, Canada, Weihai, China Seminar on Investment and Trade, where the Weihai Municipal Bureau of Commerce and the Burnaby City government signed a memorandum of cooperation on economics and trade. In August 2017, the association hosted the Shandong Cultural Trade Promotion Conference in Toronto, bringing together over 60 officials and business leaders from the PRC and Canada. The organization also chairs the Canadian Alliance of Chinese Associations, which actively participates in all OCAO and ACFROC events and organizes visits to the PRC to promote economic trade and exchanges with Canada. Now, this is where reality has to set in to Canadians, especially what we've seen in the last election. I'm working on proving this. Here's my hypothesis. We know that every party has been infiltrated, especially the Liberal Party. This has all been exposed during the whole inquiry. All of this. But you got to remember, that whole inquiry was a sham. Everybody knows it was a sham. It was a cover-up, just like every other inquiry that the government sets up in order to investigate itself. They're all lies, they're all bullcrap and propaganda. That's what they are. I'm going to show you a few pictures and a few little things and kind of tie in. And let me know in the comments, what do you think happened when we had a floor crosser? Now, this is just one event. Let's see who's sitting together. Conservative Michael Ma with Liberal Tim Hodgson 4 months ago. There's no doubt that Michael Ma is a CPP plant. Now, it goes even deeper than this. They are embedded in every single part, which they hinted at during that press conference. You know, the one where all the great journalists, the legacy media, were asking questions at? Not. Here's another great example. Now, this is a post from Found in Translation. They do excellent work. They dig documentation on the United Front group leaders. These photos appear to provide evidence of strong, familiar Chinese Communist Party ties of a conservative candidate, unless someone else can refute this. The event is led by Lily Pang, aka Yan Pang, a United Front leader in Vancouver and founder of Overseas Chinese Friends, a worldwide organization with 200 plus UF members. So here you can see in this picture, this is Lily Pang, overseas member, She's the mother of David Wang, founder of Overseas Chinese Friends. This is Edward Yang, son of Lily Pang, brother of David Wang, graduate of the UC Berkeley MBA program. This is David Wang for the Conservative Party of Canada in Richmond Centre, Marple. And here we are, September 27th, 2025, the anniversary celebration of the People's Republic of China. Listen to the fanfare for Michael Ma.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Acting Consul General Hong Guo-Chen of the People's Republic of China in Toronto.
好，接下来走来的是国会议员马荣征先生。
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming MP Michael Ma.
还有我们华人会的。
Now, we also know that Senator Victor O was on that list. He's one of the people who got exposed thanks to the greatest, the one, the only Sam Cooper. Here they are, hanging around. Jen Tan, Victor O, Vincent K, Michael Chan, Consul General Cheng Hong Go, and a person of interest to CSIS, Wei Shanghai, and Michael Ma amongst them. Read this report carefully, because it exposes exactly how they work. This is why this is my belief anyways. I'm going to prove it. I am going to work to prove it, but back to my hypothesis. This is why Carney thought he could steal a majority government. This is why he had the confidence he did. Because not only did he have propaganda, which we've seen right there with how I started the whole video off, they will not tell Canadians what is going on. They won't do it. They don't care about you. They care about their 50% of their paycheck that comes from your tax dollars. 50% of every single person on that legacy is paid by you. So they can, well, just abstain from doing their job. Right now, this should be like major news. Even though we've had a huge tragedy, this should be front and center. Instead, we got this they waste our time on puff stories and then throw in this emotional disaster that just happened on Canada's soil in order to obfuscate their true duty. Our media is repulsive. It's unbelievable. Former senior Mountie, Carney's RCMP, Chinese police cooperation deal risks Canadian sovereignty. Canadian police tradecraft is valuable to a state that blends criminal intelligence and political objectives seamlessly. After nearly 5 decades in policing, intelligence, and financial crime investigations, including professional experience working in Asia, I have learned a simple rule: who you cooperate with matters as much as what you cooperate on. Last week, the Prime Minister's office announced that Canada and the People's Republic of China will enhance law enforcement cooperation on drug trafficking, transnational and cybercrime, and money laundering. On paper, this sounds reasonable. Fentanyl is devastating communities, cybercrime drains billions, organized crime adapts faster than borders. But experience teaches me that cooperation with the PRC is never just technical, never apolitical, and never insulated from the priorities of the Chinese Communist Party. Canadians deserve to understand the risks. In Canada, policing is constrained by courts, disclosure rules, independent prosecutors, and an entrenched, if imperfect, commitment to individual rights. In PRC, law enforcement has the extension of state security. Its primary function is to not public safety, as Canadians understand it, but regime stability. During my work in Asia, this distinction was never subtle. Human rights, due process, and judicial independence were not guiding principles. They were obstacles to be managed. Criminal labels, fraud, subversion, cybercrime, economic offenses were routinely applied to political, ethnic, and commercial targets when it suited the state. This matters because when Canada cooperates with such a system, we are not dealing with an equal partner operating under comparable legal and ethical constraints. Modern law enforcement cooperation hinges on information, identifiers, financial traits, travel histories, digital footprints, investigative techniques. Even limited disclosures can be powerful when combined with the PRC's vast domestic surveillance and data collection apparatus. What concerns me is not a single file transfer, but cumulative exposure. Over time, cooperation can reveal how Canadian agencies prioritize targets, how we detect money laundering or cyber intrusions, what thresholds trigger investigations. That knowledge is valuable, not just to criminals, but to the state that blends criminal intelligence and political objectives seamlessly. This is not an abstract debate. Canadians of Chinese, Uyghur, Tibetan, Hong Kong, and Taiwanese heritage have already reported intimidation, monitoring, and coercion linked to PRC interests. Cooperation frameworks risk legitimizing and facilitating such pressure under the guise of criminal enforcement. This goes on and on. It is a great article, and he nails it. Well, he's worked for how long? He has watched Canada deteriorate into a subject of the CCP. These people have been blowing their horns. Media isn't giving them any attention because they don't want you to know the truth. I do. Sorry. So sorry. Just the truth. Just the facts. The January 2020 CSIS report couldn't have been clearer. Canada has long been a target of China's United Front influence campaign. Important ethnic Chinese organizations have been effectively taken over by Beijing, as have most Chinese language media. Chinese embassies and consulates monitor the Chinese ethnic community and coordinate United Front activities. Now you got to remember, what was our media pushing throughout the entire thing? Every single liberal, half of whom are still part of the same Liberal Party with Carney, all pushing the same mantra, in which in the very beginning, they stipulated they will use racial discrimination as a way to silence the truth of what's going on. When in fact, we should be flipping it on its head and saying, no. This has nothing to do with anti-Chinese. Chinese Canadians are great. We have to focus this on the CCP. No more of this bullshit discrimination, because that's not what it is. It's not the Chinese Canadians that are the problem. It's the CCP. But the media right away do what the Liberal Party has taught them and taught all of the MPs, and same with the NDP, they all do the same thing. Right away, you are a racist, a misogynist, blah, 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 blah. It's all crap. It's lies. Fear, hate, and division. This is what they have studied and they're using against Canada. Following a series of intelligence community leaks and public scandals revealing Beijing's interference operations to the advantage of the Liberal Party in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections, the Hogue inquiry into foreign interference finally got off the ground after a great deal of resistance from the government benches. The Hogue inquiry found numerous examples of UFWD election interference in local ridings and at the national level, targeting the Conservative Party, particularly the leadership of Aaron O'Toole. In 2023, the revelation that Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei was running an espionage and intimidation operation out of Beijing's Toronto consulate, targeting Conservative Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister Michael Chong, forced the government to order the diplomat out of the country. Zhao Wei was gathering information to determine whether Chong had relatives in Hong Kong that could be pressured to punish Chong for highlighting Beijing's genocidal policies toward the Uyghurs and Xinjiang. Now, Michael Ma sits on the board of the Canada-China Legislative Association. Oh yes, it's real. Few Canadians have a real sense of how prevalent the Chinese Communist Party's influence is on our political and business landscape, and it only appears to be growing. The recent debates about the origins of the coronavirus and the arrest of a prominent Huawei executive along with Canadians jailed in China have perhaps led many people to believe that there is a diplomatic and or economic rift between our country and China. However, nothing could be further than the truth. Now, I reported this previous episodes. They got caught on a hot mic. That they were using the two Michaels. They purposely were leaving them there to rot in order to win support in another election in which it worked with the use of, drumroll, the propaganda machine, what is legacy media in Canada. The same way the CCP runs their media, Canada's media has become a complete disgrace. 100% propaganda. They don't care about you people. They don't care. The Canada-China Legislative Association was created in 1998 under PM John Chrétien, who has maintained very close ties with China until this day as a member of the Privy Council. We know he's corrupted. Perhaps people in 1997 missed the significance of the Liberal Party's platform being enshrined in a 112-page Red Book, which touts Canada is a democratic society that affirms and supports its shared values of generosity, fairness, compassion, and respect for diversity. The Red Book was largely drafted by then Finance Minister Paul Martin, who would go on to become PM in 2004. A rare glimpse of sincerity, he privately declared, "Don't tell me about the Red Book, I wrote the damn thing, and I know that it's a lot of crap. Ha ha, hee hee, ha ha." In hindsight, it likely escaped most Canadians just how red our future would become, endorsed by all of the major political parties represented in Parliament with little or no explanation to Canadian voters. Read that one more time. Endorsed by all of the major political parties represented in Parliament with little or no explanation to Canadian voters. Do you understand how deep the CCP is involved in Canada? We watched the power shift when Ma crossed the floor. This is what the CCP does. Did Poilievre and them know about it? I have no idea. But I would definitely be doing a major review now that we have this amazing document that exposes almost 600 United Front associations that are operating. Lord knows I'm going to be digging into it. The China Legislative Association was approved by both houses of Parliament in early October 1998. Its first annual general meeting was held October 27, 1998. A constitution and its rules of operations were adopted. The executive committee is composed of 2 co-chairs and 8 vice chairs representing all officially recognized parties on both houses. Since its foundation, the association has visited most provinces in China, hosted a number of Chinese delegations visiting Canada, and worked with diplomats to further develop the relationship between both countries. The Parliament of Canada website states, the Canadian group of the Canada-China Legislative Association provides a forum for the discussion of bilateral and multilateral challenges facing the two countries in the Asia-Pacific region. It promotes the exchange of information between Canadian parliamentarians, representatives of the National People's Congress of the People's Republic of China, and diplomats posted in China and in Canada. A key component of CACN activities consist of annual bilateral meetings between Canadian federal parliamentarians and their counterparts in the National People's Congress. The association also participates in annual multilateral regional meetings such as the Asia-Pacific Parliamentary Forum and the General Assembly of the ASEAN Interparliamentary Assembly. This is insanity. Scrolling down a little wee bit further, make no mistake, these initiatives are endorsed by all the mainstream political parties. Once MPs have been inducted and indoctrinated by this system, any pretense to individual opinion is muzzled. They are told what to vote for in Parliament and then, like Mr. McKinnon, uphold the status quo and the voices of constituents and independent science. Now, McKinnon was against 5G and all of a sudden, he changed his mind. I wonder why. It was the Chrétien government that was responsible for burying a joint RCMP CSIS security report, Operation Sidewinder, that caused even fewer Canadians to hear of the report. It documented over 3,500 CCP agents active in Canadian politics, real estate investment, and business as a threat to Canada's national security. In this article, they also attached this that connects the dots to the Desmars Power Corp, former PM Paul Martin and notorious Maurice Strong, who died in China, by the way, the UN and other players who have been generously donating billions of our tax dollars to the CCP regime while it virtually buys out our country. The link is right there. As always, I attach everything in the description below. And then you get this story, which our media has given zero push on. Where are the Liberal Party? Where are the MPs standing up for the freedom of the press? Not a word. Crickets. Listen carefully and tell me which country is missing from China's blasts. China's Foreign Ministry Commissioner's Office in Hong Kong said on Saturday, it had summoned the heads of the UK, US, Australian, and European Union missions over their officials' negative comments on Jimmy Lai's sentencing. The guy's going to rot and die in jail for running a newspaper that promoted democracy and freedom. This isn't in Canada's interest. This isn't in our mainstream propaganda's interest. Because they run the same as the CCP wants. And the Liberal Party wants the media under their thumb. The office expressed strong dissatisfaction and firm opposition and urged those governments to respect China's sovereignty and Hong Kong's rule of law, stop irresponsible remarks on national security cases, and cease interfering in Hong Kong and China's internal affairs. Canada? Crickets. Crickets. They got a couple little 2-second blurps in there, said he was arrested. They didn't do their job. They didn't try to protect him. They didn't try and bring this up as a major facto. Nothing. Again, nada, zilch. Our media is propaganda. Let's just keep bobbing and weaving because this gets deeper yet. Now there's a whole tie to this that the media has been trying to suppress, but thanks to a lot of us independents out there pushing and trying to expose how mainstream lies, especially with what's going on in Iran. Now, Iran is of particular importance to China. China does not want Iran to fall. They use Iran. Our media, again, you'd think they're owned by the CCP, have been hiding all of the protests that have been going on. They finally, this weekend, started to actually talk about them. But they're not talking about what needs to be talked about. They're just bringing it up saying, hey, 300,000, 350,000 people marched in Toronto. Pardon me? That number, 450,000 in Toronto. 100,000 in BC. We have over 3.5 million people that I can click and show you very easily around the world that are marching for regime change in Iran, promoting their Shah, who has promised to give them democracy. Our media will not touch that. They are protecting the CCP Liberal Party narrative. Let's dive in, shall we? How China is quietly funding Iran's war machine. Chinese firms, especially Wanda Holdings, are helping Iran bypass sanctions, finding Tehran's military through illicit oil trade. Targeting China's economic links is key to stopping Iran's rearmament and future threats. For too long, the United States has given China a pass on slave labor, unfair trade practices, and its quite but critical support of America's adversaries. Nowhere is that support potentially more dangerous than in Iran. In June, while U.S. and Israeli forces jets struck targets in Iran, China's oil imports from Iran surged to record highs. Approximately half of Iran's military budget stems from the oil and gas sales, and no country is more critical to sustaining this financial lifeline than China. To be sure, Destroying Iran's nuclear program and military infrastructure is vital, but so is denying the regime the cash it will need to rebuild and rearm. That means going after the buyers, bankers, and billionaires in China propping up Iran's oil economy. It means sanctioning China to stop Iran. How do Chinese billionaires profit from Iran's dictatorship? A little-known billionaire and member of the Chinese Communist Party, Shang Yingyang, and the chairman of controlling shareholder of Wanda Holdings Group, not to be confused with the larger Dalian Wanda Group, a sprawling conglomerate at the heart of China's illicit oil trade with Iran. Wanda operates everything from pipelines to petrochemical plants to port terminals and oil refineries. However, it's Wanda's role in buying and processing sanctioned Iranian crude that makes the company such a pernicious threat. One that must be addressed if we are to prevent the Iranian regime from rearming. Approximately 90% of Iran's oil exports go to China. Again, I post everything. The whole article is there for you to read. This is what mainstream doesn't want you to know.
What about the media? Have they been representing the cause properly? Is there any misinformation you're seeing being said?
Unfortunately, media has not covered everything. As we know, the Canadian media is, okay, I'll just say it, it's lefties. They get paid. And we keep asking Prime Minister Carney to stop the doors for IRGC family to walk into these countries. Till this day, they are walking in with visa. They live in this city. They work in this city. And the Canadian government has done nothing.
The entire news in Canada are just, mostly to me, I think they are left wings. They just wanted to cover what they wanted. And I remember for Palestinian, all they were talking about that Palestine. Yeah, it's not about the human being, because what's the difference between the Iranian people getting killed and the Palestinian? But for Palestine, they just always talking about it, but there is a big silence, and I don't even hear any news that talking about my people in my country.
I would say from CTV and CBC, I directly talk about it. They do cover some, maybe 30 seconds, but they do not talk about our alternative. When we say we want regime change, they don't talk about our alternative. We have alternative. People inside of Iran, they call his name. We all call his name. And there is a blockage in front of his name. And when they say, oh, we are not supposed to make any difference between the alternatives. Like, there is no alternative. There's only one alternative.
Why do you think they don't want to voice the name of the king as he...
The reason is all of the other alternatives, they are working directly or indirectly with the Islamic Republic. So if some sort of they are willing and they are hoping there is a reform inside of the government. So, I guess that's the main reason they are not doing it.
Are you in touch with anybody back home? What are they saying?
All my family is back.
What are they doing?
But they don't really tell me much because they're afraid. There are different people, but my family doesn't want to speak over the phone. Right. But I have a lot of friends, so I know exactly what's going on. Everybody knows, There's no secret to anyone.
What do you say to Canadians who are like, that's horrible, what's happening in Iran, but this is Canada, what can we do here? And let's talk about Canadian issues.
Well, when there were other people killed in Gaza, everybody knew what to do because it was about humanity, it was about ethics, killing, blood. You just come and you make your voice heard. It's the same issue. People are getting killed. It's no-brainer. It's, you either, oppose a regime that kills its own people or you don't. I don't think it's very complicated.
What do you say to Canadians who say, it's horrible what's happening in Iran, but this is Canada. Why should they care?
Okay, my friend has a very nice example. Imagine you're sitting in a coffee shop, having a nice cup of coffee with your friends. The one that runs the coffee shop comes and closes the doors and start the fire. Some people are sitting outside and just watching your burning and ignore your screaming for help. Are you going to be the one to watch your neighbors, people in that coffee shop are burning to death, or you will get up and help?
400 they're saying guaranteed over 400,000 in Toronto. I'm hearing a lot of reports that it was 425 to 450,000 people. Some of the footage is absolutely insane. Like, check this out. I'm gonna have to mute that. Can you imagine? This is why CBC, CTV, Global, and all the rest of them had to say something. But they didn't go deep into it. They went out and they asked a few people, they cut them short. They're actually calling for a regime change in Canada too. They want Carney and the Liberals gone. Because they know the party has been completely infiltrated. Not only by China, but by the IRCG itself. There are sitting and retired MPs of the last 10 years who have funded and allowed Canadian money to funnel into Iran, into Palestine, to Hezbollah, to the Muslim Brotherhood. These are the things they don't want you to know. They want fear, hate, and division so that we fall into chaos. If Canadians really knew, we wouldn't be fighting over left or right. We'd be fighting over right and wrong. And where we are right now is on the wrong side of history. And the American administration knows it. And with this new report that came out 4 days ago, trust me, pressure has been turned up. Here's some more footage. Now, this went on all over the world. Mainstream doesn't want you to know this. They only talk about what they are forced to talk about without exposing the puppet masters behind them. This is Melbourne. They're saying 60 to 80,000 people in Melbourne. California, over 100,000. Vancouver, 40 to 80,000. It's all over the world. England, Germany, Belarus. There isn't a single group less than 10 to 30,000. Those are the small groups that have happened in smaller areas. The larger cities, we're seeing hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of these protesters. Mainstream media, crickets. This all ties into the CCP. These are the problems that are going on. These problems are escalating because our government is in bed with these regimes, especially China. This is another great report. The Niagara Independent, they go off into it. I'm going to read a couple small excerpts from this. Hogue has attempted to whitewash the country's foreign interference issues, framing the many controversial incidents of the last decade in Ottawa and the 2019 and 21 elections as a result of systematic problems with the Canadian intelligence community and communications issues within government. On the single greatest concern of Canadians, Hogue dismissed any notion that there were parliamentarians who have collaborated with foreign governments, though a list of parliamentarians has been compiled and reported on by the Canadian Intelligence Security Services. Hogue states unequivocally that there were no traitors in Parliament Hill. Now, everybody knows that this was a kangaroo court. Jano Ketsu was directed in saying what Hogue would not when asked about the 11 MPs or senators collaborating with foreign countries. He said, at the 15-minute mark in the interview, yes, and the number is not 11. The number is over 50. We have the names, we have the evidence, and we know when it happened and how it happened, he explained, and identified parliamentarians were actively working with foreign governments, and, he suggests, for political reasons, CSIS was frustrated in completing their work in exposing the clandestine activities. Carney is the same Liberal. What has he done? What has he done? Nothing. Not a single thing. Now I'm going to finish with a small excerpt from this amazing interview by the one, the only, the great Sam Cooper. As again, I put all the links. I urge you to watch this entire interview. Listen carefully and watch the facial expressions of Cheryl Yu.
Yeah, it's a very challenging
Right.
thing.
So
for
that brings us to your
Democratic
policy
countries.
recommendations and conclusions. You know, how should these four leading Western nations, including Canada and the United States, deal with such a sophisticated, strategic plan to undermine us? What do you recommend our governments should do together, and can they act together?
Right. I mean, I can say something like more generally, but I think since like situation is different in every country, country like individually need to act on things like differently. But I think generally, I think transparency is the most important thing. So for example, FARA, I just mentioned the foreign agent in the US, it's the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and I believe in Canada there's also the Foreign Agent Registry
On the way.
which I think it's on the way. Some of the
we're still waiting
that's
for
correct,
implementation.
Like, correct me if I'm wrong.
How many years has got to go by? How many years? They don't want Canadians to know how infiltrated we are, especially since the Liberal Party is the worst of them all. The absolute worst. Now, we know there are conservatives as well. We just watched what happened when Ma crossed the floor. This was Chinese interference. Because Beijing knew that Carney, because Carney's in cahoots with China, so is Brookfield. This is the whole Green New Deal. Who do you think makes all the windmills? Who do you think makes all the solar panels? It's all controlled. It's all controlled by China. I mean, Carney had just went in and got a, $900 and some million loan on underwater property somewhere in China just before he decided that he's going to run for the Prime Minister of Canada? I mean, previous episodes, people, this is all exposed. And it's not just me. We got great journalist Sam Cooper, who every episode, he is just, what he exposes. But because of the grip the propaganda has on Canadians, they don't know. They don't know. And they probably never will unless you like, share, and subscribe and get the word out. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot to read. It's all down below. Everything's in the description as always. I ain't fake news. I proof is in the pudding. Sorry, just the truth. Just the facts. The implications this has put on Canada. The rest of the world is reading this document. The United States is reading this document. They are going to be having committees on this document. I will keep you informed as it all unwinds. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I'm Alias Tagay. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.